Welcome back. Well, China is blasting the U.S. and President Trump over the president's action in Venezuela and controlling Venezuela's vast oil reserves. China calling the move, quote, typical bullying by the United States. It comes after U.S. forces seized 2 more sanctioned oil tankers in the Caribbean and North Atlantic yesterday. The president securing up to 50 million barrels of oil turned over from Caracas to the United States for the U.S. to sell it at market prices. Joining me now is Gatestone Institute senior fellow Gordon Chang. Gordon, good to see you. Thank you so much for being here. So much to talk about with regard to China this morning. Let's start on Venezuela. What do you think Beijing is thinking after seeing the president's actions in Venezuela and taking over the oil there? China, let me just point out,
morning,
China
Maria.
is the largest customer of that oil from Venezuela.
Yes, China takes, what, 80% or so of Venezuela's exports of crude. And President Trump is not allowing the interim government of Delcy Rodriguez to load cargoes for China. Also, the Trump administration has told Rodriguez, look, you have to sever economic relations with China. Well, what has been China's response? Well, it's been rhetorical, but there's been no pushback. And it really appears that China is a lot of bluff and bluster, but it's not the superpower that everyone thought it was last week. You know, with regard to these seizures of tankers, the Russians are actually threatening to sink American ships. The Chinese are quiet, which really goes to show that the Chinese know the limits of what they can do, and they're just not taking on President Trump.
Yeah, I mean, look, we knew that China was going to be upset by this. I mean, China has been propping up Venezuela and has been partnering with Maduro on a number of ways. But the added issue of the president of the United States dominating the oil infrastructure there in Venezuela has to be a real punch in the face for Beijing right now. What are they going to do about this, do you think? How will they respond?
They're just not going to respond in any meaningful way because they can't. I think China right now realizes is in a very vulnerable position because it's not only losing Venezuela, it's losing Iran because a new government there may not be nearly as friendly to the Chinese as the current one. And China takes more than 90% of Iran's exports of crude. So China's going to be scrambling for energy. And when you consider that energy is the foundational brick of societies, the U.S., which has been the largest producer of oil for 8 years in a row, and is also the largest producer of LNG, the United States really is dominant, especially because we now control Venezuela's 303 billion barrels of proven reserves, plus also Exxon's relationship with neighboring Guyana and with our great relationships with the Gulf states. So right now, the U.S. is in a very enviable position when it comes to this critical commodity of energy.
Yeah. And the last thing Beijing wants is to have the United States having leverage because it knows that right now China has some leverage on rare earth magnets. Tensions are elevating between China and Japan. China has banned exports of dual-use goods to Japan's military. They're banning the military's use of rare earth exports to the country, Japan calling the stunt, quote, unacceptable and deeply regrettable. China sent roughly $58 million worth of rare earth minerals to Japan in 2024, Gordon. That equates to nearly 5 million kilograms of the element. And now we see that China's Commerce Ministry says any person or entity anywhere in the world would be punishable under the order, adding that it was directly related to the new prime minister's remark in November that a Chinese invasion of Taiwan could trigger a military response from Tokyo. So what does Beijing do after the Prime Minister Sanai Takaishi, makes the comment last year? They step up this diplomatic row and they hold back the exports of rare earth minerals. Your reaction?
Well, and yesterday, the Chinese Commerce Ministry announced the imposition of an anti-dumping investigation on Japan for dichlorosilicine. So really, which is used in chip making and really important. Yeah, but the problem with China is that they tried this in 2010 with a ban on rare earths to Japan. That collapsed in a couple months. China has never been more trade dependent in its history. And I'm not sure that Beijing, with an economy that is failing and with a debt crisis, is any position to take on not only the United States, but Japan. I think at some point the Chinese realize that this is not in their interest to do this because they're picking fights with the world at a time when they are extremely vulnerable at home.
Well, I mean, how is this any different than what they've been doing to the United States, right? Holding back rare earth minerals and using it as leverage, making the U.S. hostage to whatever they want to do in terms of rare earth minerals. We need those rare earth magnets for the military. And now they're telling Japan the same thing. So what are your thoughts on how this plays out? Because we're waiting for the president to meet with Xi Jinping sometime this year. But now Beijing is telling many of its tech companies to stop any orders of NVIDIA's H200 semiconductor chips, to rely less on American technology, despite the president allowing the sale of those chips to China. Your thoughts?
Well, right now, China is in a position where it needs the H200 chips from NVIDIA. It probably will approve them, although we're not exactly sure. But NVIDIA expects to make shipments of H200s this quarter. Yeah. Interesting thing, though, is that there's Reuters reporting that NVIDIA is requiring upfront 100% payment for those chips because I guess it doesn't trust China, and clearly it should not. I don't think we should be selling the H200s to China. This is part of a much broader conversation. We know the Chinese are violating their October 30 trade deal with President Trump already by not buying soybeans in the required quantities by the end of last year. And also, we don't have that rare earth deal that Treasury Secretary Bessent told you that would be inked by Thanksgiving. So, at this point, we should not be making concessions to China when they're not making concessions to us.
Yeah. All right. We'll be watching that developing story, really. Gordon, great to talk with you. Thanks so much. Gordon Chang on China.
Thank you, Maria.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.